Today, we have an amazing interview in studio, a true vocal advocate for full life care. And it's just not a profession, it's actually a passion. So we're joined today by Jonathon Fleece, President and CEO of Empath Health. With deep roots in healthcare, law, and personal experience with hospice care, he now leads Florida's largest nonprofit acute care provider. And I will tell you, he has been an advocate speaking to Congress, and this is all for you all out there, which is amazing to have somebody like that out there. And Mr. Fleece brings a unique blend of professional insight, mission-driven leadership, and compassionate advocacy. Welcome, and we are honored.
Oh, thank you so much. It's really a privilege, and what an amazing introduction. So thank you.
Well deserved, though. So, why don't you talk to our listeners a little bit about, there's a lot of concern out there about what do we do when our parents go to hospice? What do we do to see signs before they go in? This whole long-term care scenario and the adult children and the sandwich generation. I would love for you to tell us a little bit about you and your passions and why you're doing this and why you shifted your career a little bit, and kind of do that introduction first.
Sure. So I have been very passionate about helping people through challenging times in life because I've had some of my own. I spent most of my career as a healthcare attorney and did a lot of consulting work. But when my wife and I had our first daughter, Katie, unfortunately, she was diagnosed having a fatal and terminal heart condition, and she died at birth. So jumping into or being thrown into is probably the better way to think about it. Tremendous grief and loss. I committed to Katie when she died, and I held her little infant body in my arms, that I was going to do everything I could to make her life count for something, because it was just so short. So life is a journey, and I didn't 100% know what that was going to look like until the painting sort of unfolded. But I continued down the path of working in the field of healthcare, did a lot of work with health systems and hospitals and lots of different providers, and started volunteering in the world of hospice to help people through end of life and those journeys. And it was through that volunteering and giving back that I started to realize that maybe that's what Katie's purpose and Katie's inspiration was going to lead to, was how could I help people when they're going through hard times of grief and loss. So my volunteering turned into my life's work, and now I'm just honored to serve as the CEO for Empath Health in Florida. Today we serve over 1 in 5 Floridians at end of life, and that's a bigger conversation that I'm excited and honored to get into today with your group. But it's a privilege, and I think of Katie every day.
Oh, I'm so sorry. And going forward, that's a big thing to do, and probably not a memory you want to recall all the time, but I think a lot of people out there have gone through that, and kudos, applauding you for taking those steps in that journey to help others. So try not to tear up over here. So you have a book, The New Health Age. What is that all about?
So it's not a new book anymore. I wish I could say that it's become a historical fact, but it's still very relevant today. My co-author and I, David Houle, we published that book back in 2011, and it was right after the Affordable Care Act became law. Most people know of that as Obamacare. And we wrote that book because we just felt like that the paradigm was shifting in healthcare, and really wanted to sort of help both healthcare organizations, but also Americans really try to figure out what the future of healthcare meant and what it was going to look like. Not to certainly get into politics at all, but ironically, Dr. Oz, who's now leading the Medicare program today, is endorsed the book back in 2011. And I think a lot of what that book really forecasted is taking a different approach to healthcare and looking at healthcare as being more proactive and less reactive. How can we focus more on being preventative and prevent a lot of health conditions? So there's a lot of material in that book about how we can live a healthier lifestyle and try to get ahead of a lot of things that are preventable. And then also from a healthcare systems perspective, it's part of what Empath's story is all about. It's how can the healthcare systems in America work more collaboratively and cooperatively together. You know, so much of healthcare, and I'm sure your listeners can relate to this, it feels siloed, it feels disorganized, it feels disjointed, and one group doesn't share records with another, or you're feeling like you're having to fill out the same form every single time. And look, the healthcare system is not where it needs to be or where we see it eventually landing, but there's a lot of that integration kind of work happening within healthcare. I know it's easy to get frustrated with the system, and I still have hope that we're moving in a good direction.
Yeah, our listeners can validate those things. We personally have had a lot of clients that have gone through elder care, long-term care, hospice, in hospice, out of hospice, and we walk the walk with them. We bring attorneys in to protect assets. And, you know, the biggest part is they don't know how to manage it. They don't know how, when they see the first signs of it, they don't really know what to do. They just don't do anything because they fear it. So what I would like to kind of jump into is here locally at the facility, like you guys have a walkthrough educational process that really just caters to people who are seeing signs for the first time, or if you just want to go through it and just be way advanced ahead of the curve, knowing what to look at. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So if you go to the very roots of the organization, the company's name, Empath, it really roots off of empathy. And Empath is actually a being. An empath is a person that has this innate ability to sort of sense feelings of another, to connect with others, and really almost sort of think of it as like surrounding people in a journey that can be really challenging, but surround them in a way that's going to bring calm to chaos. And that's ultimately what Empath Health is all about. And I think that's what your listeners can really benefit from is trying to look at the future of whatever their health or condition might look like and lean into it, not with fear or not with feeling like they've lost control. It's how do you help people get that control back through education, through awareness, through conversation, and through planning. So that's a lot of what Empath Health is about in the state of Florida. But, you know, for even listeners that are not in the state or don't live in a market where Empath Health is located, these resources do exist. And I think it's really important for families to think about that before there's a crisis, before there's a health condition that may send people into some turmoil. It's that advanced care planning and having these conversations as soon as possible and early as possible that can take that fear out of the day when it is a challenging time.
Yeah. Randy has been going through some things with his own mother. Randy, I know you wanted to bring something up about that. It might resonate with what he's saying right now, actually.
Yeah, I can tell you that parenting a child is a hard thing. Parenting a parent is the absolute hardest thing I've ever done. And I can tell you that, you know, in my 65 years on this earth, the hardest month of my life was May of 2020 when I had to get my mom into care. And one of the things that I would bring up, and I want your thought on this too, is Cherise said you start to see signs. And, you know, as we age, yeah, we get forgetful and we get repetitive. And there's those things, and people start saying, oh, what's wrong with you? Are you going into dementia or Alzheimer's? And some of that stuff is normal. But here's what I found. My mom wanted to move near me, and I thought I was going to put her into independent living in an elderly place. And then I got her tested, and it wasn't independent and it wasn't assisted. It was memory care. It was full-time memory care. And I realized that people who are in this position, they get to be really good fakers. They figure out how to function in day-to-day life, and you don't know how far they are down this road until you actually are with them 24 hours a day for a period of a couple of days or maybe a couple of weeks, and then you start to see them wandering at night and them trying to pay bills, and they can't do any of that stuff, and then you really start to see it. And let me tell you, I was doing this just on my own with the help of my wife. I needed support. And when you getting somebody into one of these facilities is very difficult with you and your parent. And then once they're in, man, do I need help, because all the different stages of this disease, it comes with an awful lot of difficulty. So maybe you can talk to that a little bit.
Well, first of all, Randy, sorry that you're having to go through this journey as a son, but just from one son to another, because my parents are also in their 80s, and I can certainly connect with a lot of what you're sharing. Thank you, and God bless you for being that incredible son that certainly you are being, and know that when parents or whatever loved one we're caring for are going through this, sometimes I think we as children, as siblings, as spouses, we put so much pressure and responsibility on our shoulders to be, that superhero for our loved ones. And oftentimes it's not the superhero that they need, or it's not the superhero that actually can make the biggest impact. It's just presence. Mm-hmm. It's just love and caring, for especially people that have dementia, whether it be Alzheimer's dementia or other types of dementia. Just sitting with them at times and holding their hand, or being with them, or if it's a cancer patient that is going through treatments, or heart disease, whatever it is. Yes, there are those big mountain climbing moments, but there are also the simple moments, and I think it's important to remember as caregivers and loved ones that sometimes just the presence is so huge. One program that Empath has that is growing, and that there may be other resources where your listeners are, but we have this program in Ocala, Florida, where Hospice of Marion County is located, and we're through our foundations as a not-for-profit, we're certainly seeking support to grow these programs across all of Florida. But it is a dementia education and awareness center. This one in Ocala is named after Nancy Reinhardt, John Reinhardt's late wife. And he really had this vision as a caregiver himself, caring for Nancy when she had dementia, that we needed more education for caregivers. We needed more support systems for caregivers. And through the generosity here in Ocala, and through donations, we are excited in 2026 to be opening up the first actual center. While we have the education program today, there will be a place where people that are caregivers for those with dementia can go for support, to have others that they can talk to and listen and get resources and education and tips to help people through dementia conditions, and then also to help the patients as well through different clinical programs that we have, because dementia can be a long road. Alzheimer's is about a 10 to 12 year typical progression, and it is a long journey. So yes, I would encourage you and all the listeners out there to not seek to go through this alone, and to really try to find places like this in your community where you can get support. And yes, there is a big responsibility, but also my other thought would just, again, don't underestimate just the power of holding your loved one's hand either.
Well, I'll just say one more thing, and I'll let Cherise take over. Be forgiving of yourself, because the guilt that is very common and associated with this, because I remember, and these words ring in my mind all the time, my mom looking at me and saying, "Randy, please don't put me in a place like that." And I hear that in my head all the time, but I didn't have any choice. I could not take care of her. And I knew, and I put her in a wonderful place, and I see her every week, and I hold her hand, just like you say. But the guilt that goes along with that, you just hear that and you feel that. And I think that caregivers need as much help almost as the people who are going through this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And thank you for being so genuine and leaning into that and sharing your thoughts with the listeners, because I think you're right. I think there is always an element of guilt when you're going through any kind of a loss. And even though your mother is still living, you know every day there's a part of your mother that you're still losing, because dementia, that's part of it. And I think guilt is a very common feeling that we all get. I remember losing Katie and having, guilt of, well, could we have done something differently? Why was she suffering from this heart condition? And I do think guilt is very normal and very natural. So thank you for sharing that.
And Charisse, you've told me in the past that there's one thing when you have a parent who is going through this and you're making preparations there and you don't know where to go. But then people who have that going on in their lives, they have a awareness now and saying, okay, if this happens to me, this may be in my genes. If this happens to me, I don't want this to happen to my kids because I know what I'm going through. So you have clients that are sitting in front of you that may have an awareness of long-term care preparation, and these are resources that they can use.
Yes. We've been talking to clients for a long time about hospice care and next steps, and we walk them down the walk. When it's time to, like I said, talk to attorneys, we're right there with them for elder planning. The part that we miss is the care, the grief. That's not my expertise. Mm-hmm. I'm here to do the math and facilitate and save the asset. But the part that I think is just so ingenious that Empath has is they're delivering on the education based on, Nancy Reinhardt, and it started with their story, and they're moving it forward to help so many other people, because money is money. I don't care about money. When I'm on my deathbed, I'm not going to ask you for my Edward Jones statement or the Zinnia statement. I'm going to want to see the memories. I'm going to want to feel comfortable. I want to know that this process was at ease for my family who watched me go through this and educated. So to me, this is a big part that we've been missing that I'm just a fan of. We did sponsor one of your gardens over there, the Zinnia garden.
Thank you.
Yes. When is that facility open and available for people to come in there and start getting educated?
So we do have programs today. So there's certainly a lot of resources that people can call Hospice of Marion County that are in the midst of a loved one that is suffering from dementia, Alzheimer's. So definitely the program today is open. In fact, we have a great relationship with Marion County first responders. We do a lot of education and training for Marion County first responders because oftentimes they're the ones that get the phone calls. Mm-hmm. Quick example is oftentimes when dementia patients live alone, they literally get to a point in life where they forget what they look like. They can remember themselves when they were younger, but they don't remember what they look like today. And this happens all the time. They will look into the window at night and see a reflection, and they don't realize it's their reflection. Oh. And who do you think they call? They call 911, the police department, sheriff's department, and say, I've got an intruder, when it's themselves, and they don't realize that. So we're doing a lot of those kind of training programs too for first responders. And what we're also then trying to do is help plug those people into resources so that they can not be calling 911 and feel more comfortable and safe in their homes. There's some things we can do within the homes itself to put up mirrors and pictures and things like that to reduce the fear.
Okay.
But
that's great.
Yeah, the center itself, back to your question, the actual building will be open sometime in 26. Thanks to the local generosity of our local senators and House representatives. The state of Florida did give Hospice of Marion County a small but very appreciative grant to help finish out the project. So very excited for the local support here that we're going to be able to open that in 26.
That's fantastic. I'll be first there for sure. I want to circle back to the mirror and not knowing it's them. I'm going to imagine, and I'm not sure, that there's 3 tiers and levels to where you're at in that phase. Like, let's say there's a tier 1, a tier 2, and tier 3. What level would that be in? Because there's the premature, oh, I forgot this, or oh, I went all the way to the mall, I was supposed to go to Publix. I assume that's a first level. Would you consider that tier 2 or like the final 3rd tier where you need to go get some help if you're doing that, or if you hear a parent share that information with you?
So that example would definitely be more of an advanced dementia situation that I would strongly encourage family members that are witnessing this or being part of that would go ahead and reach out to your local physician or reach out to neurologists or things like that if it hasn't been diagnosed, to make sure that it is diagnosed. Because there are a lot of medications that can help treat the symptoms. Like I said earlier, there are things that we can do, for instance, in the home where we would put more pictures out of what they look like today, to try to refresh that memory of this is you today, and maybe take down some of the pictures that they might be easier to recall from past time in life. So yes, I think that would be more of an advanced case. I'm 57, so there's no doubt that when people start to hit, generally speaking, I mean, this is sort of a generality statement, but even when we start to get into our 50s, our minds aren't as strong and as robust as they used to be. And going back to my book, The New Health Age, there are things that we can all do preventatively, proactively, to if we're at a higher risk for dementia because it's in the family, or we're feeling like maybe we're more forgetful. We can eat right, we can exercise. There are a lot of resources to turn to try to be a little bit more proactive about that. I think where things start to get more significant, which might be that sort of stage 2, tier 2 that you're referring to, is when you hear stories or have an experience of, you're in the car, you've left to go somewhere, but all of a sudden you're at a traffic light and you're like, well, wait a second, where was I going? I've forgot the whole purpose of why I'm in the car. That's probably more along the continuum of also a case to get in to see a physician or have something diagnosed and figure out where people are in that continuum.
Yeah. To the listeners out there, some of you are listening and are saying, hey, that's me. Oh, I'm getting close. This has happened to me. It's probably embarrassing. It probably changes your confidence and you're scared to share that information with anyone. But if you do, and there's things that you can do to help the future or slow it down, I encourage you to be working with Team Empath, because I've heard nothing but amazing things about them. You and I have a dear friend who's gone through this, and it's hard to watch these things happen. I've had a lot of clients and go through it as well. My own father, it was a 2-year process. My grandfather, and knowing what I know now and the things I've learned, I wish I would have already knew that, because it was a fight. Just like Randy was saying, it was an argument to, get the care, get the things done the right way, us stubborn Italians. And anybody out there that you're feeling the pain, don't fear it. Come in and talk to somebody, talk to your doctor, talk to a friend. I think that would be key.
Well, Therese, too, if I could jump in, and don't feel alone, because dementia is increasing year over year, and researchers are still trying to sort of study and figure out, well, what's causing maybe some of the increases in dementia. Part of it, they say, is just people are living longer, which is a good thing. But they're trying to also see, are there some root causes that maybe early in life we can slow down the progression, but don't feel alone, because it is a growing disease, and I think the more people can just realize that it's part of society now, and don't fear it, take advantage of the resources, I think that control can help a lot.
Yeah, and you know what? Coincidentally, I had a client come in He says, "Hey, Sharice, by the way, I don't think I told you this, but I'm a guinea pig. I'm on this trial drug by Eli Lilly, and they had to take a blood test, and I guess I've got these things called amyloids and tau, all Chinese to me. So now I got to make time to Google all this. It's one of the telltale signs that you possibly could have the dementia and the memory issues in the future, and it's supposed to help push it off further, not maybe totally get rid of it. Who knows? It's still in trial." But that's really great news too, right?
Absolutely.
So knowing that kind of stuff is out there.
So my mother-in-law, God love her, she was diagnosed with Parkinson's well over 15 years ago now. And 15 plus years ago, they had sort of given her some projections of what the disease would look like. And she has lived a full life well beyond the original diagnoses from her physicians. And I think a lot of that is because, first of all, the medications are getting better, and she got on medications really, really early. I think she has lived a very healthy life, eating right, exercise, very focused on keeping her brain stimulated and keeping mobile. So while her Parkinson's is moving in more to the advanced phase now, and actually dementia is coming into her Parkinson's disease, she's outlasted what everybody told her, and I think it's that taking that control, I think, was a big part of her success journey.
Yeah, wow. Taking control, being prudent, being a good steward of your health care, right?
The best you can. We can't control everything, but the more we can, I think it's a mental health benefit too. Mm-hmm. We see that in cancer patients all the time. Cancer is, for some, it's a rapid disease, but for many, especially with the advancements in cancer treatments, people can live longer because of those advanced treatments. But ultimately, if it's terminal cancer, it's this slow loss of control step by step until eventually, you lose total control and you die. But what we've learned in working with people with cancer is the more that we can give them some control over what they can control, it's a huge, I think, emotional, uplifting part of the journey, because when you feel like you've lost control or you've lost hope, well, that's pretty dark, and we try to keep people in the light as much as we can.
So who do you help besides just seniors?
So I wish that young people didn't have to embrace end-of-life terminal conditions that sometimes we do see. Certainly when you look at the average age of Americans now, it's in the upper 70s. It continues to increase year over year, but that's not a guarantee. So we have pediatric programs where we do care for end-of-life for children. In fact,
I didn't realize that, actually.
Yeah, so some dear friends, the Wrights, you can look up the Peyton Wright Foundation in the Sarasota, Florida area. They lost their daughter from brain cancer at 5. Mm-hmm. And, different story from mine and Amy's, my wife. But like us, they were like, Peyton was just taken way, way too short. And how can we help and give back? So they created the Peyton Wright Foundation to help other parents with kids with brain cancer. So we have pediatric programs, both for serious terminal illnesses, all the way up through people that are 100 plus years old, and not just at end of life, but through our home-based care programs, a lot of senior service programs that we offer. We have a program called PACE in certain parts of the state. Stands for Program for All-Inclusive Care for the Elderly. We have several of those in the Tampa Bay area where they can tap into an adult day center, where they can have projects and companionship and meals and activities and all sorts of wonderful things happening there. Clinic is located there, so they can tap into this program called PACE, Program for All-Inclusive Care for the Elderly. So we really do try to help people through that challenging time when a moment strikes where there's a health condition that takes your breath away. Mm-hmm. People feel like they can turn to Empath to get through it.
Breathe a little bit, maybe a little bit less stressful. Now, you're across the United States. So, this radio show is local, Central Florida, but our podcast does reach nationally. We have lots of listeners. So you have locations in different places, I heard.
So Empath Health itself, we are rooted in Florida, but because we are not for profit and we are supported by foundations across the state of Florida, we have a network of other not-for-profit organizations that are like Empath all across the country. So we can certainly always be a resource if people listening need these kinds of resources and help in their local community. We can certainly direct them as the case may be, but we are, for the most part, ourselves focused in Florida.
So lucky us then. I want to ask you a question because I think this is kind of important, and it just reminds me of me, what I would expect of my children, because I have an 11 and 16-year-old. We hopefully a long ways to go here before, if it ever happens to me. But if you have a parent, so I'm talking about the sandwich generation. Have you heard this term?
Yes.
It's like that 45-year-old, a 55-year-old. You have your parents moving back in with them. You're taking care of them. A very stressful time while they're still raising their kids. A lot of them are still raising kids, and they have these full-time jobs.
Yes.
So it's been very, very stressful. I've been through it. My sister, Randy, you name it. Everybody in the room when we're doing these 1,000-man conferences, I would say 900 of them have gone through it, and they can resonate with that. So if you are in that sandwich generation, 45 to 55, maybe even 60, and your parent is 75 years old and they haven't come to you to really talk to you about anything, is there something that the adult child should be conveying to their parent at that age, saying, hey, I heard this, or here, I'm going to share this podcast, or, have you seen signs? I don't really want to dig in because I know you're private, but I just want to make sure that we can go through this together if it ever happens.
Yes. So those are the kinds of conversations that we as Americans need to be having more of at the dinner tables. And your firm, certainly, I'm sure, is a resource for your clients so that you can give them, even if it's just a simple tool of, hey, mom, hey, dad, do you have an advance directive? Do you have a will? You're healthy today, but can we have that conversation? And, the purpose of an advance directive can really, when they walk through that kind of an exercise, can open up a lot more discussion within the family of, well, what would we do if? So that people aren't acting in a reactionary way when a bad event does happen. They've already had these conversations. So because yes, whatever that spark needs to be to have the conversation, the conversations need to occur. Just
the adult children, you just got to walk into it very gracefully. You got to be very careful because I've been through it. Now, if you're 75 or 80 years old and you have fear and you don't want your kids to get into your business, what can we say to that person listening today to help them say it's okay?
It's a great question. I think, first of all, and I'm just going to put myself into my own family right now with my in-laws, as I mentioned, with a mother-in-law with Parkinson's and dementia, and my own parents and some of their challenges. My mother has cancer. My father has Parkinsonism. So I'm living this myself. And, what I am hopeful that my parents are realizing is that, when I'm asking the questions, for instance, we strongly encouraged for my father to take a driving test recently, because mom was concerned because of some of their trips that, well, maybe he's not, what he used to be from a driving perspective. And way to go, Dad, he passed the driving test. But by leaning into that and really coming at it from a place of love and empathy and caring, we got through it. So I think from a parent's perspective, and I hope my parents viewed it this way, we only encouraged him to take that driving test because we love him to the depths of our heart. It wasn't that we're trying to interfere or take control or take anything away. We did it out of love. And I think if maybe the senior parents, as we get into that phase of life, can see that your children, your spouse, your family, when they may seem to be crossing a little bit of a boundary, they're coming from a good place, and only because we love you.
Yeah, well said. Well said. And that's such a great way to come and have that conversation with your parent, because, you know, I put myself into my mom and my dad's shoes, and and if I come across wrong, hey, you're doing some weird things, Ma, Dad, I think we need you to go do a driving test just so you don't kill somebody on the road. That's not going to fare well, right? Because for me, if somebody came to me, I'd be like, what are you talking about? I'm perfectly fine, right? But to say, hey, what do you think about this? And just another conversation. I need to create a white paper on this, I think. Well, that was great information. There's so much we can be talking about here, and I've been asking these questions. So what would you like to dig in that I'm missing today?
Well, you opened the door to, I think, an important part of the journey of life, and that's grief. And I think in America, we have moved away from feeling comfortable, with having hard conversations. If we look back in time, even the early 1900s and certainly back to the 1800s, we were living in a whole different world. It was very agrarian, and you had multi-generational families living together in one house or on the farm, for those that remember the Waltons. And I think because growing old was part of the family experience, and earlier death was certainly more frequent because the lifespan, 100 years ago was much lower than it is today. Infant mortality was much higher. I think while certainly we have so much to be grateful for and feel very blessed, and healthcare and medicine has advanced as much as it has, I think what it's done has created a little bit of this wall between the reality of we're all going to still die at some point, and grief and sadness and loss is part of life. And I think if we can have more of these conversations, I think it will make us more intimate when those moments come in our families, where, first of all, we might have less unresolved issues out there, because if we're not talking about things, then we bury them, and maybe there's sort of unresolved issues in life, and we help a lot of people at end of life work through some of that. So I think one of my big takeaways would be, let's recognize as a society that we have distanced ourselves a bit from the core of what being human means. We don't live social media lives where everybody's smiling and happy, and sometimes I think what social media has promulgated is supposed to be what every day is about. That's just not life. So I think embracing grief sometimes, and embracing challenges that life will throw at us, supporting each other through that, through conversation, through small acts of kindness, is so important. And living as neighbors with each other to support each other, I think would be a big part of my message.
Well, there's so much information for everyone to learn here, and it's never ending, and there's something always being added to the full picture. So it doesn't matter if you're 40, 45, 55, 90 years old, everybody can gather something from this message. And, everybody definitely needs to share this episode with their family members, doesn't matter what age they are, because they might be going through something you don't actually know they are. So again, your book, The New Health Age, is that something you recommend people getting, even though it was back in the day, but it's got to be relevant today?
Yes. I wish I could say that it is historical and no longer relevant, but it is still relevant. We talk a lot about the changes that are happening today still in healthcare, being that proactive versus reactive, being preventative care, and being more holistic with your care. We talk a lot, like I said, about how the healthcare systems are changing. It's just happening slower than I think we had anticipated, but no, it is still relevant. And a few takeaways that if I had to sort of summarize what I would love all the listeners to sort of maybe remember from this. Number one is having more conversations as a family about end of life, advanced directives. What does that look like? And if your financial advisor doesn't offer those services, find resources that do. And again, I commend financial advisors that help their clients through this, because financial strength is a part of it, but there's a whole lot more. And then I think by going through some of those advanced planning exercises, those will naturally open the conversation that we need to be having more as a country and as a society. So that's a big takeaway. Know that Empath Health, empathhealth.org is our website. We are here for Florida and the communities that we serve to help people through advanced serious terminal illness, whether they're got a 10-year journey through an early Alzheimer's diagnosis or more, or 10 days. And we see those patients too, where they've waited, frankly, too long to turn to us, and they may only be on hospice for 10 days when Medicare covers hospice for 6 months. And sometimes if there's need, hospice can be covered through Medicare and other kind of programs for even, longer than that. So, lean into it sooner in the journey, I think we hear that all too often. I wish I knew about hospice sooner. So lean into that sooner. And then I think another big one would just be, I loved what we talked about earlier about forgiveness for some of the guilt that we may all carry in life, and love thy neighbor. That's, I think, a big part of this, so that we don't get through life's mountains that can be put in front of us alone.
Yeah. Well, best ways to get a hold of you is empath.org.
Empathhealth.org.
Empathhealth.org.
Yes. And for those that want to support our journey through charitable giving, we're so grateful. Our foundations last year alone provided over $17 million in uncompensated care for communities. So we are so grateful for the generosity of Floridians for supporting our foundations.
Well, so generous. And yeah, we'll keep talking about that and include you in some of those conversations in the future. So everybody listening, end of life journey is eventually going to be upon us. It's going to be a long journey. Sometimes it can be a very short journey. It's an emotional journey. There's a lot of guilt involved. And if you're looking to help calm the chaos just a little bit, as you stated earlier, then you're going to want to reach out to Empath Health, because they definitely have been through it. They've walked the walk with thousands of people, and they can definitely help with that journey. And, a fun thing that I read that Jonathon had written, he starts each day with a simple goal: one patient, one family, one meaningful moment at a time. That's so lovely. I love that so much.
Oh, thank you.
And we truly appreciate you being here. And thank you for being an advocate for, end of life care, and just stepping into that role and leaving your last job. And everyone, look him up. He's done some crazy, amazing things, and a super smart guy sitting here. I would like to call you a super whiz kid, but you said you're 57, so I can't call you a kid anymore.
Well, kid at heart. And yeah. Cherise, thank you for giving us the platform to share this with your audience today. And now I know why I'll be listening to more of your podcasts, and I know why your listeners are such raving fans.
Oh, thank you. Well, we are honored, and thank you again.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Retirement Coffee Talk podcast. If you have questions or would like to begin the process of building a tailored retirement plan, call Zinnia Wealth at 833-368-3680 or find us online at zinniawealth.com.
Zinnia Wealth Advisory, LLC, and Zinnia Wealth Management, LLC are affiliated entities. The information presented is believed to be current. It should not be viewed as personalized investment advice. All expressions of opinion reflect the judgment of the presenter on the date of the podcast and are subject to change. Any legal or tax information provided in this podcast is general in nature. Always consult an attorney or tax professional regarding your specific legal or tax situation. Any client experience discussed on this show are unique to that client.